Hi guys! So I know this is kind of random, but I had recorded part of my video while I was driving, and then I rewatched it back, and I sounded like I was muffled and underwater. So I'm just re-recording the beginning. And all I had initially said was that I was listening to a sermon that I'm going to link here because I want to share it with you because it made me think a lot about how I exercise forgiveness in my life. The sermon was so Pastor Jerry Flowers, his mother, based in the church in Houston, Texas, gave a message, and I forget the name of her right now, but again, I am going to link it. And she was saying a lot of things that just like really got me thinking. And so like throughout this video, like I'm processing my thoughts, I'm processing, um, current situations and happenings in my life, and how I am going to move in forgiveness through those things in order to have restoration to some relationships that have been strained. And, this sermon just really penetrated me. Like it definitely pierced the veil and got to my heartstrings because I think that I, I didn't think that I have forgiven necessarily in these specific scenarios, but I felt like I was on my way. But this message made me realize that I was skipping some things. Like I was skipping some steps. Like, okay, you think you're on your way to forgiveness. Cool. Um, but what about this? What about that? Did you think about that? Have you tweaked this? Are you still doing that? Somebody asks you about the situation. What do you say about them? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I do need to think about all of those things, right, on my way to forgiveness. And one of the, difficult questions that comes up a lot of the times too is what, how does forgiveness look when they're not even sorry? How does forgiveness look when they don't care? How does forgiveness look when they could care less? And I don't know how, but somehow it seems like my flesh gets to this point where it considers that. And that's irrelevant, truly. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for me. Um, Forgiveness allows me to convene with my God, right? And not have to go, sit something on the altar and try to go run and chase all these people and make amends um, before I, come back. Like, forgiveness is so that God can hear me. Forgiveness is for my healing. Forgiveness is so I'm not holding anything in. And, tangentially, it benefits the other person because you're not holding that against them. But really, whether they want to be forgiven or not doesn't have anything to do with the fact that God told us to forgive. And that was something that I was struggling with because I feel like I can be like on this, spiritual thought track, and then my flesh will creep in with things like that. Like, well, they still haven't even talked to you. They haven't even apologized to you for that. Why should you, do this or go out of your way for them or continue to, give them things or whatever. And um, it's because forgiveness is so that I can move on. And so if I've forgiven you, I shouldn't mistreat you. If I've forgiven you, I shouldn't, try to get back at you when I can or try to, hold this thing over your head um, so that I have an excuse to mistreat you, right? That's not what forgiveness is supposed to look like. And so I'm, in a situation where I am trying to get to myself, um, the best version of myself, right? To where I'm not doing those things. Um, if somebody asks me to do something for them or to go out of my way for them or to forgive them or whatever, I'm still able to do those things because I've forgiven. Maybe several years down the line, that conversation will be had and an apology will come. Maybe not. I think you got to be okay with both of those scenarios when you're talking about forgiveness, because again, it's not for the other person. It's not something that they can trigger necessarily. Now, sometimes people might ask for forgiveness. But I feel like that's so rare because pride just runs rampant nowadays, and people are, standing on their wrong boldly and not caring how it impacts other people. And so, with that, spirit kind of in the world, I think that we really can't give any attention or consideration to those type of attitudes, right? We really got to kind of put these spiritual blinders on and say, you know what, you're going to do what you're going to do over there. That has nothing to do with what God told me to do right here. I'm right here. I'm zeroed in on what God said. I'm focused on what God told me to do. God told me to go out of my way and give you a ride to the doctor because your knee hurt. I'm going to go ahead and do that. God told me to go ahead and, bless you with $50 because I noticed that, you didn't have, any food in your house this month. I'm going to go ahead and do that, despite the fact that you didn't apologize, despite the fact that you treated me terribly and you didn't acknowledge that, despite the fact that you continue to not treat me great. I've, forgiven you, and depending on the nature of that relationship, maybe whether they're an elder or, maybe whether they're, somebody who just needs your support, you can be obedient to what God told you to do and handle that, appropriately or accordingly. So that's kind of like the position that I'm in. I'm really trying to stretch myself and um, operate in that. But y'all, it is so hard because the flesh is defensive. The flesh wants to let you have it. The flesh wants to give you what you gave me, right? And so you have to constantly be reminded, like, that's not how we do things in the spirit. God will take care of that. God will, convict them. God will have his time with them about how they handle that. But you are called to do X, Y, and Z. So do that. Don't wait for God to, do what he's going to do. Do what he told you to do when he told you to do it, and let him figure the rest of that out, because that's not your responsibility to try to figure out, how to make them do right, or how to make them see that they hurt you, or how to do this. You know what? God will deal with you on that. And that's like the spiritual maturity. That's the growth that I feel myself being called to. And I'm not going to lie, it is tearfully hard. It is frustratingly painful. So when Christians say no, people are like, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to, you're the yes man. You're the doormat. You're the pushover. You're the one we're supposed to be able to walk all over and you not say anything about it. But that's not what Christianity is, right? That's not what that means. And that's not how Jesus was either. He flipped tables. Okay, that didn't sound like a doormat to me. So I think, people need to be mindful not to associate Christianity with weakness, because it takes a lot of strength to forgive. It takes a lot of strength to, my baby's back there agreeing with me. I'm about to wrap it up. When my car sits still, she's like, what's happening? But when I'm moving, she likes the movement. But it takes strength to do these things that God is calling people to do, right? It's easy to cuss people out. It's easy to cut people off. It's easy to mistreat people and to be rude and nasty. Like, those things are so easy. Why? Because it's in our flesh. That's what will naturally come out sometimes if you, push somebody enough, right? But it takes strength to bite your tongue. It takes strength to, give somebody something, information, gently, but still give them that information right straightforward. It takes strength to be honest and not to lie. It takes strength to do all these things. And so, I'm in an interesting season because I'm a new mommy. Yay, new mommy me. And I wonder if these people know they're in my video. I'm not techie enough to, blur them out. But it's not like, this isn't a bad video, But if they come to me and they're like, hey, I found your video on YouTube, blur me out, like, I would do it. But so yeah. Hey, you guys. It's been a minute. Um, as I think I previously said, I recently had a surgery, so I've been healing and trying to take it easy. But I'm starting to feel back to myself now, so I want to kind of get back to making my videos.